Good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon session of the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing and public meeting of October 31st, 2023. This meeting is being held in person in our public hearing room at 1 Center Street and is also being held via Zoom and live streamed on our YouTube channel for those who would like to watch the proceedings. I will turn it over to Corey Harala to take us through the afternoon items.
Okay, thank you. We'll resume with public hearing item number 3. LPC 22-08821, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the borough of Brooklyn, block 190, lot 7, 398 Pacific Street in the Borum Hill Historic District. This is an Italianate style row house built in 1851 to 1852, as well as a vacant lot. The application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions and construct a new building.
Hey, Commissioner, the applicant have entered the hearing. Shiming Tam, I'm going to give you control of the presentation. If you could just click on your screen, then you can advance the slides using your arrow keys or your mouse. Please state your name for the record. You may be.
Shiming Tam. I'm the architect for the proposed development. The presentation page number 1, board number 1 is to show the existing conditions and also the 1940 tax photo of what was existing back in 1940. The proposed work is to renovate and extend the existing building at 398 Pacific Street and to build a new building. Actually, I have to correct it. It's a building and extension for the 400 Pacific Street. So the development will be combined into one building. Board number 2, you found, yeah. That's board number 2, right? Board number 2 is also showing the condition of the existing site. That is the view from the back of 398 Pacific, which is on the far left photograph. And the middle photograph is showing the vacant lot that it was 400 Pacific Street before. And also the rear yard showing the existing neighbors' facades. Board number 3 is showing our description of the scope of work, which I read aloud is proposed horizontal and vertical enlargement of the existing building in 398 Pacific Street. The existing front facade in brownstone will be kept with new facade at the vacant lot to be designed in harmony with the existing brownstone. The existing brownstone facade will have the original historic detail added as per landmark comment. The rooftop stair bulkhead is proposed, but will not be visible from the street level based on the site line. The diagram is showing the historic district map. We are on the boundary at Pacific Street. The plot plan is showing what it was on the top and what it is going to be proposed on the bottom. Hatch area showing the enlarged area of what the final development will be. Next, please. This is the block plan showing where our building is located and showing all the existing buildings inside the block. As you see, we are basically the addition at the back aligned with the building at 402 Pacific Street. We have a 1 to 2 story enlargement at the rear. Next slide, please. This is the facade showing the existing conditions. I think it shows itself. So we go to the next slide. The next slide is showing 398 Pacific will have certain historic element add back to the existing building. The first floor double hung window will be altered back to the original design, and also adding the molding that was there before. All the windows will be replaced, and the new building, new portion of the enlargement will be on the left side, which basically mimic the details of what the existing facade is, except the first floor will be realigned so we can fit a garage at the owner's request. Actually, the existing vacant land have been used as a parking lot for a long time, and it was a legal parking lot shown on the existing C of O. Next slide, please. That's the existing rear facade. Please note that 402 Pacific have an addition at the back. The next one, please. So the next slide is showing the enlargement. We have a one-story at the furthest point, and then the facade step back towards the existing facade. This is a more of a three-dimensional view of what it will look like. The top is the front facade, and the bottom is the rear facade, which showing how the enlargement addition at the back sort of step down to meet the scale of the existing yards inside this block. This is a 3D description. This view is actually from, is it Hoy Street? Bond Street, I'm sorry. Bond Street, it said that on the drawing, okay. So during summertime, you can hardly see it because of the tree, but in wintertime, it illustrates how the building, the existing sort of a rear facade, and we are only basically acting a very thin sliver of the enlargement. The next drawing is showing the top view of the stair bulkhead we are proposing for the top to meet the building code requirements. And these are some samples of the neighborhood garage have been existing, and some of it is existing around our historic district. More different pictures specifically at Nevin Street. It was recently, recently means have been approved in this within this few years' time. And these are the samples of the first floor and entrance without a stoop, which is critical for our development, as we have to meet the handicap code, and we need to have the accessible entrance. So we are basically giving you some samples of the neighboring development that have done similar type of thing. And more samples. And in terms of the material we are going to use, This board is showing we are using the same type of brownstone finish, which is we call it brownstone stucco. And the garage door will be wood with moldings. We will duplicate or refurnish the corners with fiberglass, which is more long-lasting, maintenance-free. And we will have the wood entrance door. And all the doors and the corners will be painted black. Benjamin Moore black matte finish. And the window will be from Perla, double hung with certain sash and well dimension that is to be here with the existing windows. This is showing the demolition of what the existing building is. Basically, we are keeping the existing facade and we are putting a new structure behind. And this is showing the side section of what the proposed demolition is. And this is the proposed structure behind the facade. And please note that the sight line from the street will not able to see, showing that the bulkhead will not be visible from the street. And these are some of the demolition diagrams. And the proposed plan, which is going to be a fireproof building to meet all the current code, including egress and handicap, fire protection, and all the current code requirements. This upper level plan showing what the basic layout is going to be a multi-family building. And the roof and the first floor. And the structural engineer also shows some of the design for shoring of the existing facade and also excavation. The excavation shoring structural plan. And some of the details. And that concludes our presentation. And I welcome any questions that you might need, and we can go back to the drawing to clarify them.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Chu.
Yeah, looking at the last slides in terms of the demolition, it looked like you're demolishing the existing house in order to build the second house. The entire party wall, am I correct, is coming down, and all the floors, because that's a bearing wall, that means all the structure goes and all the floors go too.
All the floors will have to be demolished. The floor is existing wood joist structure. We will not meet the current code. We are making it into a fireproof construction. So
essentially, what is retained from the landmark house? The front facade?
The facade and the party wall adjacent to 396 Pacific.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I have a few, but the first one is, I'm not sure this meets building code because you have one means of egress and the floor plate is over 2,000 square feet. Has this been submitted to the building department?
The application have been submitted to the building department. Our largest floor plate is less than 2,000 square feet. I think we are just hitting 40 by 50, which is 2,000 square feet per floor.
Well, I double checked that because I see that the building is 60 feet deep in some floors and what is it, 44 feet wide? And if I multiply those two numbers, I'm more than 2,000. So that is one question. Also, you have there is very little information on the materiality. You show a lot of pictures of other buildings in the neighborhood. And you have a bulkhead that is seemingly just a box. And what is the material of the bulkhead? And are you also going to differentiate in any way the existing facade from the new facade?
Oh, I'm sorry. Part of the conversation was not heard because
My first question is, you have a bulkhead,
yes,
which seems to be just a line drawing without any information on material.
the material will be exactly the same as the rest of the building, which is the brownstone stucco.
And the new Pacific Street facade is going to be matching the existing in terms of materials?
Yes.
Thank you.
So
Sure.
just to follow up on that question about materials. So the front facade of your building will be a stucco with a brownstone finish and texture. The bulkhead you're proposing the same. And at the rear, what material is the rear facade proposed to be?
The rear facade will be just stucco. Yeah. Can you show drawing A203? Oh, you are showing it now. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the material of the adjacent houses? At the back?
Adjacent houses at the back are just the existing house is just a
A white stucco.
white stucco. Yeah.
Okay.
And as you see across the yard, it's pretty much similar. Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Holford Smith.
You're proposing to keep the windows on the front facade of 398 on the top two floors. What material are those windows?
Those will be replaced with new windows. Those will be wood window by Pella. I have a detail of what the window section look like. Those will be double hung windows.
So you're replacing all the windows.
All the windows, yes.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
I have a question about the donut. And I'm looking at your addition to the back. Are you saying the new building would have 3 stories? And the existing historic building, you're adding on to that one? Or how are you achieving the back facade? How are you approaching that?
The top floor, the top story of the rear facade is the existing line of the original facade. And the bottom 2 stepping down addition are new.
Okay.
So that means the top story facade will align with the building at 402 Pacific Street.
So to be clear, the new building has the 3-story facade and the second floor facade, right? That's the new building, right?
Yeah, that is a new addition.
New
I
addition.
call
And
it
then
as
the
an
existing
addition.
one, you're adding a second floor addition.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Horizontal addition will be on the basement, first and second floor.
And is the 3rd floor to be reconstructed in its existing plane, or is it to be?
Yes, first floor will be reconstructed. Every floor will be reconstructed, but the rear facade will align with the existing facade, which is matching 402 Pacific Street.
Other questions? Commissioner Lutfi.
On the donut, I just want to understand labeling for a minute. So where you say, for example, 2B, are you labeling that this is a 2-story plus a basement? And then are you also saying or is this an addition or both?
Yeah, there was a little bit confusion. I think the staff also asked me a similar question. The confusion lays on the basement, whether it counts as a story. I said, yes, it is part of a story. By building code is a story. So what I'm labeling on that donut diagram is the bottom will be the basement. And
But it doesn't extend out to where the B is, correct? It ends where the yellow is.
the basement extend where the B is.
It does extend. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it does extend. And then the second and the first and the second floor will extend also. Only the top floor does not extend, which is the third floor.
Mhm.
Can we go to LPC 06?
No, I'm not,
I'll show it.
I'm not talking about your basement. I'm talking about the way the donut is portrayed here. So if I look, I understand that yours extends and, but I'm saying like, let's look at 414 Pacific Street. So it says 2B in an orange, and then next to it, it says B.
Mhm.
So I just want to know, are you just labeling it that this is a 2-story building and then that there's also a basement? Or are you also showing us that this lot or this building extends, there's an extension on this building?
There's an extension on this building. The
Okay, that's-
yellow is the existing footprint. The orange is the 3-story because basement is counted as a story. So it's 2-B, 2-story plus basement. And then the furthest extension is B, which is just the basement. But the basement, please note that is still above ground, still above grade. Yeah,
Okay.
Can you go to LPC 6?
sure. You don't have to, oh, this one. Yeah, this is, showing very clearly.
So what he's labeling a B is the first floor.
Yeah.
So it's 3
B
stories
is
total,
Really the first story.
3 stories at the rear,
Yeah, 3-story.
2 plus a basement.
No, I'm not even talking about his site. I'm just trying to get a sense of the donut in general and how things are being labeled here. Because
It's
it
the
looks,
same way. So
yeah,
I think
it probably is. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I just wanted that clarified.
Okay, other questions?
So are you joining the tax lots on these two properties?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So
they
it's
will
one
be
property
zoning
now.
lot. One zoning lot, yeah.
Yeah, because I noticed your plan, you intruded and you have no party wall between the two houses, which assumes you don't have a rated separation. This is a single lot now.
This is a single lot, a single building,
Okay.
with the most current code, had to follow the most current building code.
And how many units are there going to be in the building?
8 units,
8?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions? All right, let's move to public testimony. I'll note there's no one in the room to testify in person, so I'll turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a few hands raised. So first we'll be hearing from Christina Conroy from the Victorian Society of New York. So Christina Conroy, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, the Victorian Society supports this proposal to construct a new building at 400 Pacific Street, joined to the historic row house at 398 Pacific. Filling this gap in the street wall, which has left the demising walls of both 398 and 402 exposed to the weather, will add in the long-term preservation of both. We also support the decision to base many elements of the new facade on their historic neighbor, which will help unify this block. However, we don't support the applicant's plan to include a garage at 400 Pacific, finding it will diminish the unity they're trying to create. Construction of the garage will make it impossible to recreate the historic areaway fence or to align the parlor floor windowsills at 398 and 400, and will introduce an atypical element to this street. Now, drawing A201 shows that the parlor floor at 398 Pacific is at elevation 42.3, and that the parlor floor at 400 will be set at 45.10. The difference is caused by the need to locate the floor of the new garage just below the sidewalk level, pushing the elevations of the lower two floors at 400 above those of its neighbor. Because the new building's parlor floor level is 3 feet above the existing parlor floor's level, the parlor floor windowsills can't align. While there is some historic precedent for early garages added to rear extensions or freestanding in backyards of corner houses, there are historically unprecedented on the main facade of a building in the middle of the row. So we recommend eliminating the garage, aligning the floor levels of the two buildings, and creating new parlor floor window openings at 400, matching the height of those at 398. Since the parlor floor windows at 398 are to be replaced, as noted on the drawing D100, both sets of parlor floor windows should be 4/4 windows with a black painted finish. In addition, the applicant should install a new areaway fence at 400 and preserve the top floor rear facade at 398. Finally, we point out that the proposal calls for demolishing everything behind the facade of the existing building. This extreme level of intervention is highly problematic. There may be causes where facadism is a necessary approach, but not for an intact row house in a district of row houses. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Howard Collins from the Boerum Hill Association. So Howard Collins, I am promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Unmute. There we go. Howard Collins for the Boerum Hill Association. Everything you just heard was something that we echo, but I'll add to that, personally representing the neighborhood, that this is a particularly beautiful historic block, very intact, and this proposal seems out of character. Where there are garages, there are usually pre-existing buildings, some of them in the deck that were parking for horses. It's very historic, and there are very few exceptions to no one has a garage. There is no other curb cut on this block. Where there are ground floor where there's no stoop, everywhere else on this block and in most of the neighborhood, those have a side-by-side sister that echoes that. So there isn't a gap. What the Victorian Society just said is very true, and what we feel. People who buy in this neighborhood go to great lengths to restore what's there, with some exceptions where buildings were neglected and collapsed of their own accord, or more recently, an absentee owner that did damage to adjoining houses. Those are the few cases where someone was able to gut the building and start over with great attention to the outside detail. I gave very short comments in writing. I'll also point you to the HDC comments that we agree with. We just think that this is the wrong kind of impulse and really needs to be rethought. That was also what the community board said when this proposal was seen in a very similar fashion earlier this year. So thank you very much for my time. And I hope you consider this very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And next up, we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. So Lucy Levine, I am promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please state your name for the record and unmute your line, you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds this new building completely inappropriate. We are particularly concerned by the total disregard for the restoration of the existing facade and its original details, and then the copying of that same inappropriate facade onto the empty lot, a composition that is worsened by the addition of a completely out of place and inappropriately designed garage door. We note that only 2 of the garage precedent images that the applicant has included in their proposal are from within the historic district. Finally, the massing and the bulk of the rear of both 398 and the new building are overwhelming to this donut. The proposed 3-story addition at the rear should be lowered to 2 stories and simplified. We ask the Commission to reject this project in its entirety and require the applicants to start over. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I am looking at the attendees list now, and I do not see any further hands raised. So I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends denial, and I will bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Great. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Tam, I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to any of the comments we've heard.
Well, the owner is also joining. I'm waiting to see if she have any comment.
One thing that was brought up in the testimony was the presence of the garage, and I'm not sure you spoke that much about it in your presentation. So that may be something you want to address in your response and how it fits within this historic district.
I'm trying to speak for the owner. She have owned this property for a long time, and she have been using that parking space, which is a treasure in this this neighborhood. Of course, parking is not exactly the easiest thing, and she also have probably other people use that parking space. She told me, because she's not speaking out, I'm just going to echo what she's talking to me about. She had been living in another location in New York City, but she treasured living here, and she treasured a retirement place for herself, and she will use that garage for her own use. So that's the only thing I can tell, whether the commission found it inappropriate, and that is, that is beyond what she can do. Yeah, that's all I can say. Thank you.
Commissioners, any final questions? Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Do you have documentation that the existing curb cut was filed and approved by the building department?
Yes, that is on the CFO.
Thank you.
Okay, any other final questions? Okay, not seeing any other final questions. Commissioner Goldblum, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion which is for this proposal to construct a new building and connect it internally to an existing building, to add a rear yard addition and reconstruct the top floor of the existing building and have the design of the rear of the new building match that. And then at the front, the design in some ways is modeled on the historic design, except at the parlor floor and at the ground floor where they're incorporating a garage, and that affects the window heights at the parlor floor. And just with respect to past regulatory actions, we have in a number of cases seen applications to combine 2 or more row houses internally. And we have approved removing the floors and the party wall in whole or in part. And in some cases, we asked that the party wall be retained and openings be created to provide access. In other cases, we allowed its removal. But in many cases where we have allowed the removal, we have required that a wall be installed in that location at the front of the building, so that if one looked through the windows, you would still understand the individuality of the 2 houses. We have also recently seen some row houses that incorporated a garage where there was a legal curb cut. Although in those cases, it did raise challenges. I think, and again, with respect to combining the houses, I think often when we see it, it's to turn it into a large single family house. I think there is some merit here, and it's gratifying to see that it is for 8 units. And so I think that's something also that I wanted to note. So we'll begin our discussion now. Vice Chair Bland, would you like to start this one?
Start. I'm sure there are many parts of this, but I must say it is interesting and gratifying, perhaps, that we're getting 8 units as opposed to our normal reduction of units. Although I have to say, I think I know this neighborhood and the market pretty well. I'm surprised that they think this is the market there, but anyway, let it be. I think the only thing I want to really comment on and let others comment on other aspects of this is the garage. I think it's inappropriate just by the fact of it, let alone the design of it. So I can't vote for this if it has a garage in it. I'll just say that.
I think the approach of sort of modeling the design on the historic.
Yeah, well, I was going to let others talk about all that, but I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, this is a fairly intact row and donut too, as well. And so in the back. So I think just kind of continuing to paper that over with something that's similar is a reasonable approach. Okay. Whether the details are done correctly, I'll let others tackle that one too.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Lutfi.
So this Borum Hill is really one of the things that's so lovely about Borum Hill is this amazing rhythm of federal style buildings that just keeps going on, and in every block, brownstone sometimes, but a lot of federal style buildings. And this is an interesting project because it is about multi-units, but it seems, I don't know, it seems a little ill-conceived to me. Number one, I recognize that we have allowed buildings to be joined together, but it's generally not in a neighborhood like this. It's like, might be in the West Village, might be on the Upper West Side, where people are making large single-family homes and
it's in other row house districts, though.
But in this neighborhood?
I don't know, but I'm not sure that. What about the neighborhood is different to you? It's a row house district, and we've done it in other row house districts.
The neighborhoods seems to be lot, just rows of single
Right.
homes. I mean, there might be multiple units within those homes. And the whole idea of creating more units is appealing, but I guess I'm kind of having a little bit of a problem with taking down a building to do that. It could happen in two side-by-side buildings.
I mean, it's a odd place for us to be. We don't regulate use. So that's one thing to think about. I think also then thinking, is this neighborhood different because it's single family houses as opposed to other row house districts where there might be more multiple dwellings? I think that gets a little out of our purview because it's starting to consider use. And for us, it's the architectural quality and character, the architectural styles, materials, and details, and the intactness of the buildings that create the distinct sense of place for which a district is designated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that in this historic district, the sense of unity is derived from these rows of buildings, but that can be said in many other row house districts. And that is the basis for the designation of those districts as well.
Mm-hmm. So then in this case, that would be continued, even if what is behind the facade is different. Okay, so I appreciate that clarification. And then I would have to concur that it is unusual also in this district for there to be a garage fronting on the building. And so that seems a little unusual to me. Also in the back of the building, it seems as though it's a little bit too high and it needs to come down on a level.
And I think that's.
The garage certainly is an architectural feature that one will see on the street. And
Right.
so I think that was, and it is something that is not typical of row houses. Okay. So, and the rear yard addition is too high on the existing building. And do you feel the same way of the back of the new building as well?
I do.
Okay.
And it is a very intact donut. I mean, remarkably so, actually.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I think that, there are lots of components. I do think adding the addition of the townhouse in the missing lot is a positive thing for the streetscape. It's interesting because I could almost see this as two applications. One is to renovate the existing historic landmark building, and the other is to propose a new building in an empty lot. My hugest concern is taking the existing historic building down, because I would hope you could renovate it without having to take it apart and demolish it. And that the commission has been concerned about other applications that could potentially lead to damage of the historic fabric. This one is significantly altering the structure. So that's one concern I have. In terms of that's a means and methods. In terms of what's being proposed as the final product, as I said, it could be two applications. What's being shown, I agree that the garage is not a consistent use for this type of facade. And I think they need to look at the way that it's detailed. And also the aesthetic seems inappropriate. Typically, you might see a conversion to a carriage house or something that might be a garage door. This is a different scale of building. The rear of I also think that the front facade of the new building, it disturbs me that the windows aren't the full height that the neighboring adjacent buildings all have really generous 4/4 parlor windows. And it's odd, the relationship between the garage opening and the windows above. In the rear of the facade, I think what disturbs me is two things. As a donut plan, it's the two lots represent the most significant push into the donut as a unified move, which I don't see anywhere else in that donut. In fact, it is the furthest projection on any side. So the impact seems imposing to me. The other thing is that the row houses are beautiful because they're one next to another and they each are slightly different. There's a character to each of these houses, and together as a collective, they make a beautiful streetscape. The back seems extruded, like they're just stuck on as if it were two lot building, which it may be combined to, but that is not the historic structure of this block. Individual lot, which have some distinction and character that differentiate them. And I would have liked to see that more on this rear approach, apart from the fact that the mass is a bit imposing.
Okay. And that is something also that we have typically asked for there to be more individuality.
Right. Okay.
Or distinct differences in the designs to reflect the individuality of the buildings. Commissioner Master.
I'm just going to comment on the garage. I'm actually okay with the garage, and the reason is because the C of O was for parking, and they do have a legal curb cut. And because of that, and because there are other garages in this historic district, I think I'm okay with the garage. In terms of the rear yard addition, I don't feel very strongly either way, so I'm going to leave it to the other commissioners.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson.
I mostly agree with Commissioner Chu that these are two separate issues. There's the fabric and there's a new building. And I agree that the new building, if it's supposed to replicate the fabric, doesn't do that spatially in terms of the garage door and the kind of basic landscaping element is just foreign. It doesn't tie it together. So the concept of copying or replicating it's not working properly. In terms of the back of the building, the idea that it's two separate buildings, one that sticks out more and has a different facade on the back, and the other one, putting them together also creates a competition that's not. So I'll use the same word that Commissioner Chu said. It doesn't work very well.
Commissioner Halford-Smith.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the comments that have already been said. Looking at photos on Google Earth, and the curb cut appears to be maybe homemade. It's not, it doesn't look like it's a sanctioned cut curb, but nevertheless, I still think that putting a garage here is inappropriate in this context. And sticking with the facade, I'm also looking at the applicant did not give context photos, but I'm looking at Google Earth photos. Most of the houses on the street have multi-pane windows. And I think if he's replacing the windows, then they should be historically accurate windows. I also had the same trepidation as everyone so far, sort of this facadism and putting a new building behind this facade. So I think they need to work very closely with the staff on the front facade detailing to make sure that it is very carefully done and reads like, even though it's going to be combined, it reads like a separate facade for, it could be a separate building. Same thing on the back. And I think that the rear addition is 1 story too tall. And, in general, there's a lot of information that's kind of lacking from this application, makes it hard to evaluate everything.
Agree. Commissioner Goldblum.
Okay. I personally think that a garage could be okay here, but not this one. I think that in light of other applications that we've seen relatively recently, the garage should be lowered to allow for the alignment of the parlor floors. That can be done by ramping the areaway in front of the house and or dropping the height of the garage door. I also think that the rhythm of the street is pretty clear that it's going from right to left, 2 bays and then a stoop, 2 bays and then a stoop. this infill building reverses that rhythm, and it should unreverse it so that the rhythm can be maintained. We've also seen garages in mid-block conditions where the fence is used to hold the line on the sidewalk, an operable fence. That would be an appropriate incursion here as well. So I agree with the others who's talked about lowering the windows on the parlor floor. I think that in terms of I think Ann's comment about the mullion windows is correct. I agree with that. And I also want to emphasize that the detailing shown in the drawings is inadequate to assess the conformity, and the comments of the HDC regarding the detailing of the facades should be to restore them to the original condition and not to the stripped out 1950s version of the house. In terms of the interior of the existing building, I believe that, as you said, we should maintain the party wall. We, at least in large measure, it doesn't look like that's a heavy lift because the design pretty much has a wall within a foot or two of the party wall location on most levels. So the fabric of the building should be maintained as a kind of structure. And I agree that the rear yard needs to come down by a floor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg.
Well, I agree with many of my fellow commissioners' comments. I would just have a few to add. First of all, I think there are some building code issues with this design as shown. And I'd like to have the applicant go to the building department, and they can't get approval till we approve, but show that it complies with the building code and zoning resolution, but particularly building code. Second of all, I think at least the top floor of the existing rear facade should be maintained. They're right now demoing all of that, and it should be kept. I agree that there's too much of an intrusion into the donut. I also feel, following other commissioners' comments, there is not enough information. We don't have any render elevations, etc. We don't have any pictures of the box on the roof besides it being a gray box. And then I also would like to see studies of how the new, I think, presuming you're making a multifamily building, it has to be one application. But the new facade should not be a total mirror besides the parking and the different floor levels of the other ones, in my opinion. There should be some way that it hints that it is built relatively recently and isn't there. And there are lots of ways to do that. I'm not saying how, but I think this needs a fair amount of work before it can come back to us.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Chapin. Just unmute. Yeah.
I also agree with most of the comments of my fellow commissioners. And in particular, obviously, we need more information. I think in addition to what others have commented on, we could use some more photos of the streetscape and rear context. I think that the way that the garage is currently proposed is definitely disruptive of the streetscape pattern. Possibly the suggestions Michael Goldblum made about how to introduce a garage could be accepted. But I feel that the parlor floor windows there should be parlor floor windows similar to the rest of this row, given that they're trying to create this sense of a row being completed. And in the rear, I think that even though the terminology about the numbering is a little confusing with the basements, that it appears this is a unique third floor extension, so that it doesn't seem very appropriate in context because of the relative intactness of the rear facades. So that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, commissioners, thank you all for your comments. We're not going to take an action today. We will ask the applicant to think about the comments we've made. Please work with the staff to work through those comments and come back with some responses in terms of the scope of work and the design of the new buildings. And it's the additions at the back, new building and the additions at the back. But also we do work with the staff to enhance the presentation so we have enough materials to really understand the details and the context. So we'll take no action and we'll come back. We'll have you back when you're ready and we'll move to the next item.
All right, we'll now move to public hearing item number 4, LPC 23-11810, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the borough of Brooklyn, block 292, lot 46, 183 Amity Street in the Cobble Hill Historic District. This is a row house built in 1852 to 55. An application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions, replace windows, and modify window openings at the rear facade.
My name is Thomas Barry, the applicant.
Abby, could you advance the slides for the applicant? I think we're still having problems.
Yes, I can do that.
Say next slide. They'll control.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Barry, the applicant for the vertical and horizontal extension of the existing row house at 183 Amity Street. Next slide. I'm going to skip through, as I was asked, some of the background information on the site and the location, as I think everyone's aware of it. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. This is the existing building. So the proposed scope of the addition is a 2-story rear addition of 15 feet in depth, including the cellar of the existing townhouse, a additional 4th floor with a 9-foot 2-inch setback from the existing front facade, and a proposed bulkhead with a roof terrace and a canopy that will align with the proposed bulkhead and contain solar panels. Next slide. This is the plan showing the same. Next slide. So the block plan showing multiple existing rear yard extensions, including one to the lot to the east, which is a similar height 2-story extension. 181 Amity to the west, a slightly taller building, a great variety of different sizes and heights of buildings within this inner block. Next, please. So this is the existing condition. You can see the existing 2-story extension on the left to 181 Amity. Sorry, 185 Amity. To the right, 181 Amity Street, which is significantly taller than our extension, which we will be coming up to. So we're basically at the end of a set of row houses where to the west of our lot, the scale and the height of the adjacent buildings jumps up. The bottom right hand corner, you can see the large former school building. It's a co-op now, which comes to the rear lot line at a significantly higher height. Next. The existing roofscape, you can see there are no additions to the row houses. You can see how, as we're on the end of the row before 181 Amity, increase in height. Next, please. So the scope of work, including historic restorations to the front facade, will include replacement of the front windows with a 2/2 at the upper floors and a 4/6 muntin pattern at the lower floors. The additional floor with a aluminum cladding with a faux wood print and the zinc clad bulkhead. Next. The rear facade, the lower two-story addition will be in brick with a divided light pattern with aluminum windows and sliding doors. The second floor level at the roof terrace with new fenestration to match within the existing facade, a widening of the third floor windows, the fourth floor addition with the again the aluminum clad wood print pattern, and then the bulkhead in setback slightly from that with the zinc cladding. And the fourth floor addition will also be set back 3 feet from the existing rear facade. And we're maintaining the top dental detail at the existing rear facade. Next, please. A blow up of that, showing the same in detail. Next, please. So the rendering illustrates the size of the two-story addition at the lower levels relative to the building to the east with its existing two-story addition. The new addition and bulkhead and pergola canopy solar panels coming up to the height of the existing multi-story building at 181 Amity with the materials, proposed materials illustrated to the right. Next, please. Section view showing. Next, please. Similar view of the other side. Next, please. This is the existing section. Next, please. Proposed section. We are also lowering the level of the garden with a stone retaining wall to be at the basement level as well. Next, please. Visibility. Next. From the street. So we did the mock-up. Next slide, please. The part highlighting green is the fourth floor addition with the 9'2" setback. The red is the railing for the roof terrace. And the blue outline is the posts and tape that represents the new bulkhead and canopy at the front edge, with the X marked box being the AC unit closest to the front. Next, please. So in terms of visibility, the only element that would appear from the street, as we highlighted in yellow and rendered with the horizontal cable rail and gray painted railing at the roof terrace, so minimum impact. We have a portion of the railing visible in some views. Next, please. From right across the street, the railing, only the railing is visible. Next, please. Closer view with railing visibility. Next, please. Say similar minimal visibility of the railing. Next. From at the sidewalk immediately in front of the building to both the east and the west, there's no visibility of any of the additional elements. Next, please. As you can see here. Next, please. And then just to briefly discuss the front facade elements, the railing detail will be a horizontal cable rail painted in the gray color for minimal impact and minimal visible steel elements for that railing. And the window muntin spacing with the 4/4 at the upper floors and the 4/6 at the bottom floors will have a divided glass light with outer muntins and a spacer with a wider vertical muntin And at 2 inches and a 1 inch horizontal muntin. Next, please. And those are the details of that. We'll also be doing a new brick mold as part of that window. And that concludes.
And can you just pause for a moment on the window details? You're doing the wider muntin? Are you doing the bead detail down the middle of it?
The horizontal mullion will be the vertical. Will be beaded.
Will be beaded. Okay. All right. So that I think is a change that's not reflected in our comments, commissioners. Okay.
Can you repeat the vertical mullion? What was it?
The vertical mullion will be at a 2 inch width, wider and more predominant than the horizontal mullion, with a beaded detail at the edges.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Lutfi.
Is there any need to make that railing not visible?
We would have to explore sending it back, which would significantly reduce the usable roof terrace. And I'm not sure what that dimension would be. We'd have to physically move it.
Do you want to just go to the plan drawing and just?
Sure.
Abby, can you move to, not sure what page number it is. There.
Yes, basically.
There's a laser pointer right next to you if you'd like to use it. No, actually the one on the side of the podium. Thanks.
Yeah, so we're basically right here. And, I know that at the bulkhead, which is okay. At the bulkhead, which is taller than the railing, obviously, at 9'6", we don't see any of it. So I imagine that we could accommodate a setback of that railing, which would probably be at the midpoint, just eyeballing where we would have to be to reduce.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
This question, is the bulkhead also visible?
No.
Not from the street, no.
Not from the street, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Commissioner Ginsburg.
If we go to the front elevation, the windows on the building to the right have a different division than you're proposing for yours. And I'm just wondering if there was a reason for that. Because they have more divisions on all of the levels than you're showing.
That's true. This was an aesthetic decision, a simplification of the window muntin pattern, which I believe is historically appropriate when a thicker center muntin is provided.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we were not sure about. I'm not sure what the multi-light windows in the adjacent building, if they're original or later. But the 2/2 and the 4/2 and the 4/6 with a wide center muntin with a bead to replicate a casement window is typical of houses of this type. That we've seen it in houses that date to the 1850s. So it is a typical configuration, and I can't speak to the one next door.
Neither show up in the tax photo as divided lights. Also.
Okay, that's helpful. Commissioner Chapin, did you have a question?
Jean's question was the same. Jean's was my question about the railing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Same as hers.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, let's move to public testimony, and we may have more questions after that. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak on this item? All right, noting that no one in the room wishes to speak on it, I will turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a couple of hands raised for this item. First, we will be hearing from Christina Conroy from the Victorian Society of New York. So Christina Conroy, I am promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Again, Commissioners, I'm Christina Conroy from the Victorian Society, New York. Now, when we prepared testimony for this application for its initially scheduled September 26th hearing, we emphasized the visibility of the rooftop addition as seen looking through a gap in buildings on Pacific Street. This visibility wasn't addressed in the presentation we saw. We hope that today's rescheduled presentation would address that visibility, but it does not. We have attached to our written testimony we took in September. The leaves were still on the trees, so we noted a photo to show the outline of the mock-up. Now, we ask that no action be taken until the applicants address the visibility of the rear facade and rooftop additions. Regarding the other aspects of the proposal, the Victorian Society supports restorative work at the front facade. However, we do not support the applicant's proposal to install railings which will be visible from Amity Street at the penthouse level terrace. This single-family house has lots of private outdoor space. We don't think it's a hardship to require that the railing at the front of the penthouse be set as far back as DOB regulations will allow, 6 feet. We believe this will eliminate all visibility of the railing. We also do not support the applicant's proposal to eliminate the historic window openings and adjacent masonry at the 2nd and 3rd floors on the rear facade. The destruction of historic material at the 2nd floor is obvious. The work at the 3rd, while less imminently apparent, is just as bad. Widening the existing window openings by nearly a foot means the destruction of the original lintels, sills, and bricks, and will significantly alter the historic proportions of this section of the facade. The historic window openings on these floors should be retained. Finally, we continue to believe that the construction of large window openings which span the width of a 19th century house is totally inappropriate. The Commission has approved the installation of tripartite windows, which separated by piers, which both respect the historic window arrangement seen on New York row houses and increase light and air. We encourage the Commission to ask this applicant to revise their proposal in this manner. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. So Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds this proposal inappropriate. First, we find the front facade mounting configuration inconsistent between the parlor floor and the upper stories. Second, we find the rooftop bulkhead above a 4th story extension overscale and overly visible from multiple vantage points on this wide street. On the rear facade, we find the ratio of glass to masonry at the rear elevation to be poorly proportioned. Additionally, the widening of masonry openings on the 2nd floor is inappropriate. We ask the Commission to require this applicant to work with LPC staff to reduce the scale of this project and develop details that are more consistent and in keeping with this district. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised for this item. So I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 6 recommends conditional approval so long as the rooftop bulk is decreased and or top stair bulkhead is removed. And I will bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to any of the comments we've heard. And in particular, could you address any potential visibility from Pacific Street?
Yes, looking at the block plan, I realize that there may be a sliver of visibility from Pacific Street. It's minimal. I wasn't able to gauge that with the mock-up in the summer months. And I believe that that issue is mitigated by the building's location within the block adjacent to 181 Amity Street, which is significantly taller than our building, and which we were basically up and adjacent to. So I would argue that the visibility is minimal, and from a distance across a large green space, and from very select vantage points.
So, yeah, it looks like you might clip the corner.
And I mean, in addition, the pergola element, which we're proposing, which is effectively providing solar panels, which is at the same height of the bulkhead, I think is a reasonable component, also to add to the energy efficiency of the building.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum.
Can you go to the rear facade? I guess that's page 12 of 40. You noted there that the new rooftop addition is clad with a wood look aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what your goal there is with that?
It's a material that is differentiating itself from the existing masonry based building, and effectively lighter and more additive in nature.
Right. Yeah, so it's like an interlocking kind of vertical aluminum with a kind of a vinyl print on it.
Yes, it's a printed aluminum panel.
Got it. And it's what color? It kind of looks like it's kind of a matching the brick color.
It's basically a I think the next slide has it, or two slides ahead.
Your color shot, yeah.
Yeah, that's color, right? So it's a cedar.
And the side wall of the rooftop addition is white painted stucco.
That would be stucco, and
the bulkhead above the addition is zinc.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Besides the solar power, the solar panels, is there anything else you're doing to lower the energy consumption of the building?
Well, I mean, the whole building will be gut renovated with at the rear facade, triple glazed aluminum windows. The facades of the addition will be built to current energy codes with exterior insulation, high R values, as well as the vertical addition and the roof. And then, with the existing walls, which are currently uninsulated, we would be doing sprayed foam insulation on the interior, which is really the maximum that you can do. So in terms of insulation value, a significant increase through the course of the work. We're bringing everything up as high value as we can. The end user will be long term and wants a high performance home.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? All right, not seeing any other questions. I think we should move to our discussion. So Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion on this proposal. And it includes, as we've seen, a rooftop addition, rear yard additions, altering the fenestration at the upper floors, particularly at the top floor where the windows are being widened, and the window replacement at the front facade. Commissioner Lutfi, would you like to start this one?
Yeah, sure. Overall, I think this project is pretty well done. I do have a few things that I think would be helpful. The first is I happen to feel as though that railing in the front really needs to be pushed back. so that it's not seen. I don't think that condition really exists on this block at all. And I think in the ideal world, it would be great if they could eliminate the visibility at the top as well. That's possible. And then
It's just, I want,
oh, okay.
From the,
But
just
I
clarify
thought-
further, from the back of the other side of the block, there is visibility of a portion of the penthouse. And I believe the pergola, and then the architect was trying to explain what that might be, but there was not a image provided of that. It is provided in testimony, thanks to VSNY, and we could put that on the screen if that's helpful at this point in time. But it's true that you do see some of this through that gap in the street.
That's what I thought. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
If it might be worth looking at, or if anyone else has questions other than I do, but otherwise
Yes. Abby, would you like to put that up, please?
Sure, I'll do that now. Can you see the photograph in front of you?
I'll narrate just a little bit. There's a second image, but in this case, where you can see the fainter tree in the gap there, that's the uppermost branches there, you would see, a portion of the rear of the penthouse. And then I assume above that, some of the solar canopy as well. Abby, if you can do the second image with the markup.
Okay.
Or can you have these, it's difficult to go back to the first image?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you if you're talking to me.
Can you go back to the first image?
Sure. I'm just going to share my entire screen here.
Okay.
Just to make it easier. So you've got this one. Here's the original. And then here's this zoomed in photo.
Okay. So
You all see this?
yes, thank you, Abby. So it's sort of like the halfway mark between the two buildings is where you'd catch the top corner of the building and the addition above. Okay.
So, I mean, I would be interested in what my fellow commissioners think about that, and
I mean, I would note that
would be open to hearing that. And then the only other thing that is they changed the openings of the punched windows on the
top floor.
And I think it would be better if they were retained.
Okay. Great, thank you. And I think that view was very helpful. So I do want to thank the Victorian Society for providing that. But I think, we have allowed for more flexibility into over rear or secondary facades, particularly through very narrow gaps. All right, Commissioner Chu.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Lepke's comment about the windows on the back at the top floor. They should be the existing window openings. We often make that case that we want to see the fabric of the facade at the rear at the top, and redoing the windows essentially eliminates that. So I would also urge them to keep that outer window existing opening the same on the outsides and pull that down to the big window they're creating below that. There's the top floor, because if the windows are wide, and I just want to make sure there's an alignment with the larger expanded window below it so that they register.
All right, so align the
Yes.
open, yeah,
definitely.
align with
And
the
retain the existing windows at the three top.
at the top floor.
Yeah, I'm also troubled by I think what it is this sort of accumulation of boxes that create the stack effect. I understand the mass of the neighboring building that relieves the height a little bit, but that's one singular masonry mass, which is the whole building. I almost feel like, you know, the top piece, which is the stair bulkhead, feels excessive. I mean, if we didn't have that and you put the solar panels on the roof below, I would feel much more comfortable with the mass and you wouldn't see it. Those are my two big comments.
Okay. Commissioner Master.
In terms of the rear, I agree that the top floor, the window, should be changed. In terms of the view of the rooftop addition from the rear, the picture provided by the Victorian Society, I think that the visibility is minimal. And so I'm actually okay with the visibility there. And I'll defer to to the other commissioners on other comments.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson.
I agree with most of the comments. I agree with Commissioner Chu that the language of the roof and a planar situation there should be more volumetric and more solid. I think, but I also have a problem with the material, with this new material, Atlantic cedar color, and it's a beautiful color, but it somehow doesn't seem to relate well to this fabric somehow, and it's foreign to me. It's something that should be looked at.
All right, Commissioner Goldblum.
Yeah, I agree with what others have said. I'm with Stephen on the top bulkhead. Really, not ready. It's a single family house. I don't think they need it by code. Bring the solar panels down to the top of the new addition and call it a day. Cut the railing back on the front to reduce visibility. And I'm with Everardo on the fake wood. I think it looks particular because of the visibility of the rooftop addition. It looks even more thin and kind of applique than it would otherwise. I think maybe they could consider taking the stucco around to the front or using the zinc on the front and the side, or continuing the brick up on the side and having the zinc go across the back side of the facade. More traditional solutions for that kind of thing, so that from the vantage points where it is visible, it's better. Oh, and also echo other comments on the width of the top floor, existing windows, and the alignment with the floor below.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Okay, I agree with the comments on the top floor windows. I agree with the comment on the metal with the printed wood grain. I think if you went to the siding, it would be better. I'm also looking, it looks like they're totally relocating the stair. And if it was done differently, you could be sloping that top bulkhead to minimize how much of it was visible. I don't have a problem with the partial visibility from Pacific Street, but I think there are ways they could minimize that top bulkhead.
Okay. Great. Vice Chair Bland.
I think most of it's been said, but let me just quickly repeat my thoughts. Yes, keep the third floor windows as they are in terms of size, the width. Get rid of that stamped material, wood material. I think I don't have a problem actually with the height of the little pop-up there, or the slight visibility for a split second as you're walking in the back street there. But I do have a problem with that material, and I think if it were just brought down to be zinc, that would be fine. And the pushback on the front, as it's been said many times already, so we don't see that rail.
Okay, Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I agree with other commissioners' comments that the railing should be pulled back. I think that the visibility, I'm glad to have the pictures from the Victorian Society, but I think that rear yard visibility, which is limited through a limited view corridor, and I think this is similar, and that the windows on the top floor should be the same dimensions as they currently are, the existing windows, and align as other commissioners have suggested. I like Commissioner Bland, I don't have a problem with the upper structure, and I can, those are my comments.
Okay. And I do think that, you know, from that view, it's really the canopy that we're looking at, not the bulkhead, right? The penthouse and the canopy, not the actual bulkhead, but I know that there, yeah.
And I meant to say that the reason I'm okay with that top thing is because it's adjoining a building that's the same height.
The same height. Okay.
That's the reason.
All right. Thank you. So I think we have enough to move to make a motion to approve it with the condition that they retain the size of the top floor window openings. They set them railing back to reduce or eliminate its visibility over the front facade, and that they restudy in consultation with staff the form and materials of the rooftop additions. Yes, please. Thank you. In the matter of docket LPC 23-11810, 183 Amity Street, Cobble Hill Historic District, a row house built in 1852 to 1855. The application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions, replace windows, and modify window openings at the rear facade. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Cobble Hill Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the proposed rear yard and rooftop additions will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features. That the proposed rear yard addition will not be visible from any public thoroughfare. Well, yes, that's true. That the rear yard addition will not project further into the rear yard than any other rear yard additions within the block, and therefore will not diminish the central green space. That the two-story rear yard addition will be consistent with the height of additions found at other buildings in the row. That the materials and design of the rear yard addition, featuring red brick cladding and multi-light metal windows and door assemblies and metal picket railings, will recall the typical materials palette and articulated fenestration found at secondary facades and additions throughout the historic district. That the modified openings of the second floor terrace will maintain the outer masonry piers and align with the existing punched openings at the third floor above, resulting in a cohesive fenestration pattern that maintains the residential character of the rear facade. That the proposed rooftop addition, solar canopy, and bulkhead will be set back from the front and rear facades, maintaining a sense of the building's original massing. And the building siding against a taller building at the end of the row will lessen the impact of the height and massing of these additions. That the proposed gray finished metal post and wire railings will only be partially visible. Well, okay. That the rooftop addition will only be visible from public thoroughfares over the rear facade through a gap in the street wall and at a distance from oblique angles and limited vantage points and within the context of other rooftop additions. However, I recommend
that the existing size and placement of the punched openings at the top floor of the rear facade be retained, and the windows below should align with them better. That the visibility of the railings over the front facade be eliminated, and that the applicant restudy the form and materials of the rooftop addition with staff.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chu, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson. Aye. Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Nine favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Please continue to work with the staff and we'll move to the next item.
Okay, and I'm going to note a schedule change now. We will not be hearing public hearing item number 5, LPC 24-02387. This is the 32 Avenue of the Americas long distance building of the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, individual and interior landmark. I'll be reading that into the record as I just did to be presented at a future public hearing date. But again, we are not going to be reviewing hearing item number 5 this afternoon. So we will now move to public hearing item number 6. LPC 24-01502, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 226, lot 1, 75 Varick Street, the Holland Plaza Building, individual landmark. This is a modern classical style loft building designed by Eli Jacques Kahn and built in 1930. The application is to replace window assemblies and install a railing.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is John Schoback from Hines, representing ownership on behalf of Hudson Square Properties, a joint venture of Trinity Church Wall Street, Norges Bank Investment Management, and Hines, the operating partner for this property. As background, the Holland Tunnel Building, or 75 Varick, is a 17-story, 1.1 million square foot commercial property with ground floor retail and office uses above, and was originally built in 1929. Pre and more acutely post-COVID, we've seen strong demand from office users for private dedicated outdoor space. In 2018, we completed a 19,000 square foot rooftop project for a building-wide rooftop amenity for the office tenants of the building, with beautiful landscaping, interior lounge space, presentation area, and leisurely outdoor seating. As long-term owners, we are pursuing creating a similar outdoor space on the roughly 3,500 square foot 8th floor setback on the south side of the landmark property that would be dedicated to a new office tenant. We have taken best efforts and thoughtfulness to best match the 2018 approved and built rooftop amenity project, and believe that the changes proposed are harmonious with the original building's design. With that, I will turn it over to our well-esteemed team from Higgins, Quaysbark and Partners, and we also have our team from Huntsman Architects here as well.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Sarah Ripple with Higgins, Quaysbarth and Partners. See if I have control. Abby, can you turn to the next slide?
I think I'm going to have to take this over.
Okay. Thank you. And you can go to the next slide also. Thank you. As John introduced, this is the Holland Plaza building, now called 1 Hudson Square. It's a designated individual landmark. It's on an irregularly shaped lot facing the Holland Tunnel, as he mentioned, in 1929, 1930. Built by a significant garment manufacturer, but interestingly was initially occupied by a number of firms in the printing and related trades. The area of work, as mentioned, is that 8th floor terrace setback that you see in the upper right, to activate it as usable outdoor space, including new doors and a glass safety rail. Next slide, please. The building was designed by Eli Jacques Kahn in a modern functional architectural vocabulary that, as you see, emphasizes the structural grid without a lot of applied ornament.
It's characterized by strong vertical piers, textured horizontal spandrels, and steel windows. The Watch Street side, which we see in both of these photographs, and documents the area of work, is characterized by a series of setbacks, and at the ground floor, vehicular loading bays. So this elevation out of the three really serves as the building's secondary kind of back of house elevation. The historic windows had a central pivot sash for fresh air, and historic documentation, as we see here, shows that building over the course of time consistently with the flutter of windows, some open and some closed, creating a varied texture across the elevation. Note also, while we're looking at these historic photographs, that the parapets historically were articulated only with a simple terracotta coping at each of these setbacks. Next slide, please. Looking at our existing conditions, overall views looking east and west in the top row and some details in the bottom row. We see the beige brick facade and terracotta block that makes up the facades. The historic windows had been replaced prior to designation with aluminum double hung windows with a copper verdigris. Also prior to designation at the parapet, we see in the overall photos and a detail in the center on the bottom, a white painted pipe railing was inserted directly into the top of the historic terracotta coping, which is not an ideal condition or intervention. So the proposal will involve removing these pipe railings, repairing the terracotta, and resolving that issue. The new railing will be the same height, but installed much further back. Next slide, please. So here's the area of work on the north side of the 8th floor. Currently, this is inaccessible. There are no doors, only those double hung windows that we just saw. Next slide, please. And the scope of work includes removal of the window system from 2 bays, installation of doors, new glass guardrails integrated into new planters, and new roofing and pavers. Next slide, please. So we have our existing elevation above. In the middle elevation is the proposed, and the bottom elevation is cut behind the railings. So we see dropping the sill for that door installation, and also exit signs and simple sconces installed at the facade. Next slide, please. Here's a section through the parapet, through the whole terrace, showing those details. Notably, we see the glass railing set into the new planter, set back by a little over 2 feet. So the installation of this element will not have any physical impact on the historic building. It will be non-reflective glass with a simple metal cap, matching what was previously approved for the 17th floor roof terrace, which you see in the upper right, a photo of that. Next slide, please. These are just enlarged elevations and plans showing much of the same details. We see how the vertical and horizontal mullions match the existing window alignment, the transom matching that uppermost window row. Next slide, please. And then details of our mullions, showing the window and door mullion details. The dimensions grow slightly at the jamb, of course, and meeting style as needed for operation of the door. Next slide, please. And then these are just vertical, comparable vertical sections from existing all the way on the left to the proposed on the right. Next slide, please. So stepping back and just looking at the changes within the context of the overall elevation, it's a tremendous facade where the important characteristics are the regular masonry piers and spandrels and the consistency of the large window openings. And the regularity of that grid is undisturbed by these minimal changes. Next slide, please. A rendered view from the terrace. The existing view is in the top right. In terms of finishes, the proposed door system will match the copper verdigris of the existing windows. And next slide, please. And for context, to touch on what John introduced, the building received approval for installation of the same glass railings and other non-visible changes at the 17th floor terrace in 2018. We have snapshots of that public hearing presentation below and a photo of the railings actually installed above. Using the same railing detail will provide consistency across the building. And this also helps us kind of see what that glass looks like from a distance, having a discrete presence against the body of the building. Next slide, please. Similarly, simple glass railings have been found appropriate at other landmarks as part of proposals to activate outdoor space, including at some other individual landmarks where it was determined that glass railings would be visually unobtrusive and not obscure significant details, which is similar to this current proposal and the goal of this current proposal. Next slide, please. So I'll walk you through some mock-up views. We did a mock-up of the railing and of the windows. We'll take a walk around the neighborhood from Varick, Dominic, Hudson, and Broome Streets. Please note that the real view is at left, and we note the approximate distance from which you're seeing it in the caption, and the zoomed view on the right, lower right, is to just provide clarity of what you're seeing. So here we're across the street. Next slide, please. And then moving down towards the north, you're seeing just a little bit of the glass railing. Next slide, please. And then again, further towards the north, about a block away. Next slide, please. From a block and a half, we're seeing just that upper horizontal rail mullion of the existing windows and some of the glass railing, but from quite a distance. Next slide. And then from Dominic Street at the northeast. Next slide, please. And then moving towards the west over the Holland Tunnel. Next slide, please. And along the west side. Next slide, please. Next slide. Virtually from where no one ever really stands, but from the Holland Tunnel. Next slide, please. And then from the park right across the street. So in general, you see a small portion of the top of the doors, but at these distances, it's actually very hard to perceive in a real view. And the railing, although minimally visible, will be seen against the large glazed openings beyond. All in all, these are very discrete, reasonable changes that when seen within the context of the larger elevation will be difficult to perceive and will not diminish your reading of the building or the historic characteristics that make this such a special building.
Okay.
And with that, we're happy to take any questions that you might have.
See my email. Hi, thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Just one. Can you go to the section to the parapet? I just was wondering what that space is, like that 1 foot or so space between the front of your planter and the parapet. Like a gap. Oh, kind of went a little too far. There you go.
Hi, I'm Tom Maneri from Huntsman Architectural Group. So that 1 foot spacing is for C-hooks for facade inspections rather than scaffolding the whole building. Every 5 years, you can attach a C-hook to that and back to the facade for any repairs or inspections.
Great, thanks.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Commissioner Chu.
The new storefronts are the same storefront system as the existing windows that are adjacent, or are they different system?
It's a different, I believe it's a different system. It's the same system as what was approved at the 17th floor to kind of have that consistency across the two terraces, but it's a different system.
So if I look at
windows.
the dimensions of the mullions, the color, everything on that terrace level, is that going to look any different than the rest of the fabric of the window systems?
Let's see, maybe we can go to the rendered view, Abby. It won't be a discern. Here we go. So the dimensions of the mullions are actually quite close, aside from the kind of meeting style and at the header. But the dimensions are actually quite similar, and the kind of main difference, I suppose, is the insertion of the doors. But from grade, what you're really only going to see is kind of that top row, that transom line, which will align across the elevation with the other windows. And the intent is to match the same finish.
Okay, and then you're putting a pedestal paver on the roof, right?
Yes.
And do you have the height to do that, to hit your door window sill? It looks like it didn't change, but I assume it's going to come up.
So there is a slight elevation with the pedestal system, but also the masonry is being dropped below the sill. There's about 15 inches of masonry dropping below the windows in order to allow for that access.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Okay, let's see if there's any public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak on this item? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Gregory and see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have one hand raised in the attendees list, that being Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. So Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC largely supports this application, though we feel that a metal railing, as existing, would be more appropriate and less reflective than the glass railing proposed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends approval, and I will bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, thank you. So would you like to respond to that comment about the railing? I think you did show us that we had previously approved glass railings here, and are they non-reflective?
Yes, thank you. So the glass that is proposed for the railings is non-reflective, a lower and non-reflective glass. We also, given the mock-up studies that we walked around, given the setback and the transparency of it, it should have a much more discrete presence than the non-historic pipe railings. And will be more in keeping, I think, with the elevation of the building and allow the historic terracotta to kind of return to its historic condition also. Yes, thank you.
I don't believe the pipe railing would meet the code requirement for guardrail for occupied terrace either.
Okay. All right, Commissioners, any final questions? All right, let's move to close the hearing. Vice Chair Bland, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion, which and this application before us is to modify these windows to accommodate doors. It's really the transom portion that you would see from various views, and then the non-reflective glass railing, which is consistent with the railing we've already approved on this building. Commissioner Master, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I think this presentation was very well done. And it's minimally to almost not perceptible from the streetscape. And, you know, it's wonderful that they're able to replace and have doors and make the space accessible. And I'd also like to point out that I think we've done it on the 17th floor successfully. And so I think this is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's great use of the roof space, and I like the fact that it actually brings back the historic coping condition. Totally appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi?
I agree.
Okay.
Project.
Commission. Right. And Vice Chair Bland?
I agree as well, but I just want to say often I'm opposing glass rails because in certain contexts, like a historic brick townhouse or brownstone, when it's often I think it is reflective and you do see it. It doesn't go away, but here it's appropriate. Partly, I think, because of its non-reflectiveness, but also it's already on the building, and it just seems to work with buildings of this size and age, as opposed to a small, delicate little house.
Thanks. Commissioner Goldblum?
Great, appropriate.
And Commissioner Jefferson?
A wonderful amenity for the tenants. Appropriate.
Great. Okay. So I think we all are in agreement. Commissioner Master, would you make the motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC 24-01502, 75 Varick Street, Holland Plaza Building, which is an individual landmark. A modern classical style loft building designed by Eli Jacques Kahn and built in 1930. I recommend approval, finding that the replacement of select railings and modern infill and removal of small sections of plain masonry beneath certain windows to install doors for access to the setback terrace will not eliminate or damage any significant or historic architectural features. That only the uppermost portion of the proposed infill will be minimally visible from a public thoroughfare, and as seen from a distance, the proposed infill will match the transoms of the existing infill at the surrounding bays in terms of proportions, configuration, and finish. that the proposed glass railing featuring a non-reflective coating will be difficult to perceive when seen against the background of the building facade, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of this individual landmark.
And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, and Mark, John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes. Commissioner Ginsburg is recused from this matter.
All right, and we'll move to the next item. Thank you.
The next item is public hearing item number 7, LPC 24-01158, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 569, lot 30, 27 East 11th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. This is a Greek revival style row house built in 1845, and the application is to modify window openings at the rear facade.
Brian, you're gonna have to tell me next slide because we're having technical difficulties.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ryan Zeke, Preservation Staff. The item before you is for 27 East 11th Street. Please advance. Located on the north side of the street between 5th Avenue and University Place in the Greenwich Village Historic District. Next slide. For your reference, it is one of 5 Greek Revival style houses dating from the 1840s. Next slide. Here are the tax photos and the existing conditions photo of the front. Next slide. As well as at the rear. The basement and 3rd floor additions shown here were part of a previous commission approval. This slide also shows the 2 neighboring row houses at 29 and 25 East 11th Street, both of which previously received certificates of appropriateness for work at the rear. The rears of these buildings are not visible from public thoroughfares. Next slide, please. The proposal before you is to reconstruct the rear facade in its existing plane and modify the window openings at the 4th floor, seen here in the middle. Next slide, please. This elevation shows the subject premises as well as 29 and 25 East 11th Street as they appeared prior to their recent approvals. Next slide. And here we see the proposed work in context with what was approved at the neighboring houses. Next slide, please. For your reference, here are the existing and proposed conditions. The center masonry opening was raised as part of a prior commission approval. The current proposal enlarges these existing openings, shifts them toward the center of the facade, and includes multi-light paired doors with new brownstone lintels. Next slide, please. This photo montage shows these 3 houses. Next slide. Along with a rendering of the current proposal in the context of the other approvals. Next slide, please. This is a detailed elevation of the proposal. Next slide. And the proposed materials. Next slide. And the following slides are show the existing and proposed plans to which we can refer back if there are specific questions. Abby, could you slowly go through the next 4? Thank you. And the applicant has provided an axon of the existing and proposed conditions seen here. And the next slide, we see a detailed view. And the applicant is here to present the appropriateness of this proposal and to answer any additional questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners, and happy Halloween. Thanks for making time for us. Yeah, this is a very exciting project for my firm and for our client. Really, the essence of what we're trying to do here is our client is
an artist, and we're trying to create for them an artist atelier or garret space in the top of their brownstone, which is Greek Revival row house, which is reminiscent of what you see around the West Village. Even though this is the Far East Village, we still have examples of this type of artist garret up and down our street. And you can see our neighboring applicants have also designed similar types of treatments to their row houses. And just to speak further, that our design is literally keeping within the shape and parameters of the prior renovation from 2012 and 2013. We're just recreating the sloping mansard in a zinc-coated copper, which is more historically correct than the synthetic roof that's on there now, which is like a kind of high-tech rubberized roof, which is inappropriate when it's visible on a sloping or vertical facade. And we're doing on the skylight, it's a very refined metal skylight instead of a bulky aluminum skylight. It's actually a patinized bronze, which really replicates more of that industrial metal framed glazing and fenestration you would see on an artist garret. And then the vertical surface, which currently in the slides that Ryan showed you before, had 2 punch windows and then 1 center set of doors, which looked very suburban. And I think they're kind of like off the shelf doors and windows. And our goal here is to unify not just our skylight treatment, but the rest of the house with this 4th floor elevation, where you could see in the slides that Ryan showed us before that the articulation of the fenestration and the detailing is actually quite nice from the parlor level up, and then it kind of fizzles out at the 4th floor. So our goal is really to kind of bring this all into a harmonious sort of assembly. And we're really excited about what our neighbors are doing, because frankly, that in the before photo that Ryan showed, you could see the neighbors' facades. I don't know if I can pan back to those. Were really kind of a mess. And there's the proposed, which is like a kind of hodgepodge. I mean, the existing, and then you go to the proposed, and it's really a beautiful assemblage of rear elevations that you would see in the evolution of a classic West Village inner historic block, or what we call the donut, and more consistent with the level of design and detailing that's currently existing in the front, because these row houses are really immaculate examples of the 1840s Greek Revival. So like I said, we're very excited about the project, and we feel that what we're proposing is consistent with the stature of the house and the idea of providing the space for our client.
All right. Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right. Let's see if we have any testimony. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to speak on this item? No. So I'm going to turn it to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. I do not see any hands raised for this item. If you would like to speak, please click the raise hand button right now. Okay, I do not see any hands raised. So I will just note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends approval, and I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions for the applicant? Okay, let's move to close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to
close the hearing?
And Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the hearing is closed, and while the applicant is doing work on the roof surfaces and the bulkhead, the only portion of that work that is before us today is the modification of the top floor window openings, which, as we discussed in a previous application, is something that when there is a row of consistent pattern, we have typically asked that those opening sizes be maintained. In this case, there isn't such a row, and we've already approved enlarged openings on adjacent buildings. And so their proposal would do, seeks to do something similar. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Jefferson, would you like to start this one?
This is an interesting one for me because looking at this last night, I said, fine, okay. But then I realized that this was recently renovated. I think you have to help me here. And the ideas that we have is that the top floor should remain the fabric and not be changed. That's correct.
So as I was saying, and we typically do ask for that, just as we did on an earlier application, particularly when there is a row with intact window openings and a relationship to them. In this case, we have approved alterations to the back of this building as well as to the adjacent buildings, including enlarging the top floor windows on the adjacent buildings because there was not a consistent row.
So this is where I need your help. The rule does not apply here. The idea of
right. I think that's the position the commission took when we looked at the other applications, that because it was not a consistent historic fenestration pattern at the top floor, there could be more flexibility in enlarging the openings.
Accepting that rule, I think what they have here is quite lovely. Works very well.
Okay. Great. Commissioner Master?
I agree. I think this is appropriate.
Okay. Commissioner Chu?
I would agree. I think that the revision is improved. It distinguishes the top a little bit more from the bottom, and they all do that. And I also appreciate that you're looking at the future and what the changes to the neighbors will be as you look at the future picture.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi?
Yeah, I don't.
Vice Chair Bland?
For 28 years, I walked to my office 3 houses away. Know it well, except I never could see the other side because there's no visibility. Now I get to. This is perfectly wonderful and appropriate.
All right. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Appropriate.
And Commissioner Chapin?
I can support it.
Okay. And Commissioner Goldblum?
Great.
Welcome. Okay. All right. So I think we can make a motion to approve it as presented.
Go ahead.
Yes.
In a matter of LPC -24-00011158, 27 East 11th Street, Greenwich Village Historic District. I note that the building style, scale, and material and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District. I recommend approval with modification.
Just approval.
Approval. That the proposal work will not be visible from any public thoroughfare, that the rear facade of the neighboring row house feature a variety of fenestrations and change in plane. Therefore, the proposed work will not affect a unified composition in the row, that the top floor of the rear facade was previously reconstructed. Therefore, the work will not eliminate any historic fabric, that the top floor of the facade will be reconstructed in its original plane, therefore retaining a sense of the building original massing. And that the proposed enlargement of the masonry openings and the installation of the multi-light doors will maintain a residential scale.
All right. That's it. Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right. John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
None in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
All right. That's approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
We'll move to the next item.
But the next item is public hearing item number 8, LPC 23-08875, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan block 465, lot 109, 104 East 10th Street in the St. Mark's Historic District Extension. This is a neo-Greek style row house built in 1879. The application is to legalize the removal of ironwork without LPC permits.
Okay, commissioners, the applicant has entered the hearing remotely. And Dana, we're having technical difficulties. So if you could just tell me, next slide.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, commissioners. Dana Litowitz, preservation staff. The item before you is for 104 East 10th Street, located on the south side of the street between 3rd Avenue and Stuyvesant Street. Thank you. In the two building St. Mark's Historic District Extension. Next slide, please. One more slide, please. Thanks. The proposal is to legalize the removal of historic cast iron security grills at the two basement windows, which does not meet the commission's rules for staff level approval. For your reference, here are photos of the building in the 1980s and in 2019. The historic grills are visible in the designation photo on the left, but were replaced with contemporary grills without a permit at some point between 1986 and 2009. Next slide. Here are existing condition photos of the building, which was restored in compliance with a certificate of appropriateness issued in June 2018. The C of A included approval of a rooftop addition, modified rear facade openings, window replacement, and restorative work at the primary facade to address open violations in effect against the property. Back to slide 3, please. The violations included ongoing facade work, including paint stripping, et cetera, issued in 1985, and 3 violations issued in 2009 for lintels shaved at parlor floor and second floor, newel posts altered, removed, and garden floor window guards replaced. Slide 5, please. So again, at some point between the 80s and 2009, the historic cast iron grills were replaced with contemporary grills. The understoop gate seen at the extreme left in the top 2 photos remained and was restored with modifications as part of the 2018 C of A. Next slide, please. A photographic study of the block illustrates a mix of guarded and unguarded windows within the St. Mark's Historic District and Expanded District. And you can go through slides 7 to 11, please. Here are some before and after photos showing the restoration work addressing the other violations at the property. And to slide 12, please. And here's a slide showing the modified historic understoop metal security gate whose design matches the historic window grills. Identical grills to the ones that were removed at this property are visible in the left behind the restored ironwork. And that's 106 East 10th Street. Final slide, please. Thank you. And applicants are available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant at all? Okay, so I think the point is though in the past was a series of violations. I think is this a new owner who purchased it and is addressing it? And in large part were the restoration work that's been approved at staff level. And there's one component that's before us, and that is the removal of the basement grills, which happened in the past. And they have shown examples of other buildings in the district without basement grills. And these basement windows are partially below grade. So is that any questions about that scope of work?
What about the facade work for the color? Was that done without permission or?
So it sounds like in the past, there were a lot of unsympathetic alterations. Right. In 2018, the current owner undertook a major restoration plan that was approved at staff level to correct all of those violations.
This is all, they went through the proper process.
Yes.
Okay.
It was actually commission approved.
That was commission approval. Okay.
Do we think they're going to replace anything? I'm just wondering from security.
Well, I think that is to say to have them removed and be okay with that.
They want us to be okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I guess they're somewhat protected behind because they're partially below grade in an areaway that is fenced, but this is something that if the applicant is here, if they want to speak to the owner's intention with respect to security or.
I can speak to that. I'm Michael Chen. I'm the architect. The owners had a preference to not have bars on the window of their home, and that was sort of the end of it. We felt that the restoration of the cast ironwork at the areaway railing, as well as the restoration of newel posts and cast iron, more than adequately satisfied the public good in terms of restoring the original historic material that was lost.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's see if we have any testimony. Jeremy, do you want to test? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. I do not see any hands raised for this item. If you'd like to speak, please click the hand raise button. Okay, no hands are raised, so I will just note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 3 recommends approval, and we also received a letter of recommendation from the Lower East Side Preservation Initiative. And I'll bring it back to you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I think we can, if there are no final questions, move to our discussion. So Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Just motion to so move. Okay. Or will you second? First. All right, let's all in favor. Aye.
Aye.
All right. We're all in favor of closing it. Okay. All right. So this is, as we've discussed, a proposal to legalize and maintain no grills at the basement level of the facade. Commissioner Chapin, would you like to start this one?
Sure, thank you. I think this is totally appropriate. It's a condition that's found in other locations in this neighborhood, and it's nice that they don't feel it's necessary to have the grills, frankly. And all of the other restoration work it's great to see it. So I find this totally appropriate.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
Great.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Appropriate.
Master.
Appropriate.
So I think unless anyone has any different view, then I think we'll just go right to the motion. And so that, so Commissioner Chapin, would you go ahead and make that motion?
Sure, thank you. In a matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, LPC 23-08875-104 East 10th Street, St. Mark's Historic District Extension. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the St. Mark's Historic District Extension. I recommend approval, finding that the original security grills that were previously replaced without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits were not special or unique in terms of craftsmanship or design, and the subsequent grills did not match the originals. That the basement windows are partly obscured from view by the front area ironwork, and that the lack of security grills at the basement windows does not call undue attention to itself within the row and does not detract from the building or streetscape.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson. Aye. Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next and final item.
Yes. We'll conclude with public hearing item number 9, LPC 24-01925, an application for a binding report in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1111, Lot 1, Central Park, the Mineral Springs Building, in the scenic landmark of Central Park. This is a concession and restroom building built in 1959 within an English Romantic style public park designed in 1857-58 by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux. The application is to construct a partially enclosed pergola assembly and modify walls and paving.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am Joy Gutierrez, and I am the Parks Revenue and Concessions Architect. I am joined today by Tony McCary, Director of Concession Architecture at Parks, Jason Gold, and Richard Lewis of Richard H. Lewis Architects. We are here today to present a design for the reconstruction and addition of a pergola structure at Mineral Springs in Central Park. Next slide, please. The Mineral Springs Cafe is located near 69th Street and West Drive and sits adjacent to the Sheep Meadow. Next slide. And next slide again. The 1950s building was constructed to replace the original Mineral Springs Pavilion located nearby, and since then, the current building has housed the food concession and parks operations. The Landmarks Commission has approved renovations over the years, which included the conversion of a portion of the service yard into outdoor seating for use by public visitors to the cafe. Today, we would like to show you the design of a pergola structure at the same existing outdoor dining area, where we would like to note that the footprint will remain the same and not expand. This parks concession has been operated by Le Pan Quotidien since 2010 and is being operated under the terms of a 15-year license agreement with the City of New York. LPQ is contractually obligated to make improvements to the site, which include providing the pergola structure. Parks is supportive of this design and believe it will greatly enhance and make this truly a year-round facility for enjoyment in all weather conditions by local residents and visitors of Central Park. The architectural firm who will present today is Jason Gold, representing Richard H. Lewis Architect. Thank you.
I'm Jason Gold, project architect with Richard H. Lewis Architect. Next slide, please. I'd like to thank you, Joy, and thank you also at the LPC for the opportunity to present this proposal. The goal of this proposed design is to enhance the public benefits of the existing concession in the park by adding an enclosable pergola structure over an existing open patio, turning it from a seasonal amenity into a year-round amenity. Looking at the, nope, not yet. Thank you. Looking at the existing conditions plan, the orange area is the existing Le Pan Quotidien interior, including kitchen and sales area, which will remain. The pale blue is existing outdoor seating facing Sheep Meadow, which will remain. Gray is the surface portion of the building, including public restrooms and storage and workshop areas for parks and the Central Park Conservancy. And the white area is an open air depot for parks and CPC maintenance vehicles and supplies, all of which will remain and are not part of this proposal. The medium blue area is the existing open air dining patio where we are proposing a new pergola structure. Next slide, please. These site photos are taken from a distance from various angles around the site to show the context of this proposal within the larger landscape of the park. The site is indicated by the white dashed rectangle. Next slide, please. These are existing photos of the site showing the existing open patio to be replaced, the existing wooden trellis structure to be removed. Next slide, please. The existing wood fence, upper center, between the outdoor dining area and the park service area to remain. Existing low masonry walls to remain, existing service entrance to remain for service access between the dining area and the kitchen, and the low masonry retaining wall to remain that allows the patio to be a level surface on an otherwise slightly sloped site. Next slide, please. Existing and proposed site plans showing the location of the proposed pergola area. The proposed pergola is part of a prefabricated pergola system manufactured in the US by Renson. Please note that this proposal does not expand the footprint of the existing building, nor does it expand the seating capacity of the dining patio. It does, however, enable the public to use that seating area in all weather 12 months a year. Next slide, please. Existing and proposed floor plans showing the new seating area and the tinted service area roofed with black fabric that connects the existing building to the new pergola structure. Next slide, please. Existing and proposed roof plans showing the louvered roof of the new pergola structure. The louvers are operable and motorized so they can be opened to the sky in good weather and closed to create a waterproof and watertight enclosure during cold or wet weather. Next slide, please. Existing and proposed elevations showing the relationship of the new pergola structure to the existing building. Next slide, please. And showing the existing wood fence in the lower elevation to the main and the canvas structure over the service link. Next slide, please. Renderings, photo montage, showing summer and winter views. In the summer, the front of the pergola structure will be completely open to the park. During the winter, motorized transparent screens will roll down to create a weatherproof enclosure, and a glass door to the side provides access. Next slide, please. So just more frontal views of the new pergola in summer and winter modes. Next slide. We did the same distant landscape views we showed before, but this time including the new pergola structure showing its relatively low impact presence within the mature Central Park landscape. Next slide. Interior views, just to illustrate the effects of the operable roof. Next slide. Other structures in Central Park, either existing or approved and under construction, showing the variety of architectural styles from rustic to contemporary, and the many ways that permanent structures are already used within the park. Next slide, please. Images of the cladding and pavement materials, including bluestone paving for the dining area, gray tile for the service area, and black sunbrella fabric for the enclosure of the service area. Next slide, please. This is a mid-distance view from the sloping lawn to the east of the site, showing the relationship of the pergola to the existing Mineral Springs building and to the surrounding mature park landscape. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity, and please let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have questions? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
So there's an existing building and you're adding to that building.
Yes.
And you're using a concept of contrast, right? Because one is you're using architectural contrast between the two buildings. And my question is, what was your thinking? Why that? Why contrast?
We, in consultation with parks and with the CPC, we wanted this to rest very, very lightly on the landscape. And I think that was the primary reason why we chose for it to look this way.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Lutfi.
So is there air conditioning in the summer?
Air conditioning in the summer, and there are heaters attached to the beams, infrared heaters for the winter.
Any other questions?
Is this classified as a temporary structure or a permanent structure?
For our purposes, because we define temporary in terms of a time period, we wouldn't look at it as a temporary structure under our rules, but sort of the temporary nature of something is something that is considered by the commission. But the term temporary for us applies to a very specific time period.
And as a question, this is a prefab system?
Yes.
So they essentially they need to anchor the steel frame to the ground, and that's pretty much it, right?
That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions? Okay, we do have some testimony. So Jeremy Rudolph.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeremy Woodhoff, speaking for the Victorian Society, New York. The Victorian Society opposes this application. We object to enlarging and extending the life of the present building, an inappropriate, intrusive structure added to the park in the mid-20th century. The Commission should advocate for demolition of the existing building and reconstruction of the original Calvert Vaux designed Mineral Springs Pavilion, or a new building that follows the park's historic design principles. Central Park is likely the only park in the city that has the resources to undo these mistakes made during a time when there was little understanding and appreciation of the park's historic design. We urge a return to a bolder vision for the park's restoration. In other places where the Parks Department or Conservancy has decided to keep rather than replace similar 20th century buildings, it has incorporated relevant historic designs to obscure or soften them. This was done at the Kinderberg, where a close replica of the original rustic shelter was recently approved and built around the mid-20th century Chess and Checkers building. A similar approach could be taken here, looking to the historic Mineral Springs Pavilion for inspiration. And I believe I heard that the concession agreement is shortly to expire. So this would be the time to look at this before it's renewed for another lengthy period. The proposed enclosed addition with its minimalist character, sharp lines, flat roof, and lack of picturesque or rustic detail is not appropriate stylistically to the park. It doesn't even relate successfully to the 1959 building to which it would be attached. That building at least presents a more neutral face to the park's landscape. Slide L019 shows how much more intrusive the proposed addition would be than the existing building is. It's important to understand that Central Park is not an historic district that might accept or even celebrate good modern design. It is a single work of art with its historic buildings and structures designed in the picturesque or rustic styles depending on the setting. These styles weren't selected randomly. They were based on a careful analysis by the designers, Olmsted and Vaux, along with their contemporaries and predecessors, A.J. Downing and A.J. Davis, of the appropriate designs for structures in a naturalistic setting. One wouldn't repair a damaged Thomas Cole landscape painting with a patch from a Mark Rothko abstraction. The Commission must deny this proposal from a private vendor to enlarge an intrusive park building in an inappropriate style. Thank you very much.
All right, and I'll note there is no one else in person to testify, so I'll turn it to Gregory Kala to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a few hands raised for this item. The first you'll be hearing from is Nuha Ansari from the front of the Upper East Side. So Nuha Ansari, I am promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please state your name and unmute your line, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Chair Carroll and Honourable Commissioners, my name is Nuha Ansari and I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts. Friends Preservation Committee recognises the utility of year-round enclosable seating at this popular Central Park location, but is concerned that the synthetic materials proposed for the pergola structure would be difficult to maintain and would not wear well in the longer term. Although we appreciate the fact that the addition will not increase the footprint of the existing seating area and would create a more uniform outdoor space, we feel that the proposed structure with its black painted metal, louvers and screens is too obtrusive and detracts from the park's landscaping and vistas. We also can't understand how the translucent screens retract when they're not needed. We urge the applicants to consider the use of natural materials such as wood for their proposed structure to find a subtle and minimalist solution that would be in sympathy with its surroundings in New York's most prominent scenic landmark. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Landmark West. So Landmark West, I am promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Megan Fitzpatrick speaking on behalf of Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee believes that if incremental elements must be added to the park, that they serve an essential public purpose, and if they absolutely must be added, then these elements should be consistent with the design and naturality of the landmark park. This proposed temporary but permanent looking construction's design and materiality ascribes to an international style with little allegiance to the design of scenic landmark Central Park, offering no relation to the original nor current mineral springs. This design adds a whole new language architecturally, and our committee believes this is a mistake. The proposed materials lack cohesion with one another, with the park, and may also prove difficult to maintain. The synthetic wall screens will stain from sun exposure, and this mesh-like material is difficult to clean if any vandalism or other staining may occur. An improvement using the existing wood pallet or even brick may offer more sympathetic options. Further, we have to caution that the enclosure design presented to us appears as if it is intended to serve as an event space, not simply publicly accessible outdoor seating as currently exists. We hope this is not the case and that this space will not simply fill our landmark park with a streetery like those which proliferated during the height of the pandemic or coveted solely for corporate parties. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee recommends the applicant go back to the drawing board, and we hope a proposal that matches with the surrounding artistic and naturalistic elements of the park is presented. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And next up, we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. So Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Commissioners, my name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds this outdoor seating enclosure to be overly hard-edged and rectilinear for this pastoral landscape, and that its design would set an inappropriate precedent for new structures within the park. Central Park's landscape and its buildings were designed in concert to be a single cohesive work of art. We believe that any new structures that are proposed should blend seamlessly, contextually, and artfully into this work of art. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised. So I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval and Manhattan Community Board 7 recommends approval of the construction of the concession with limitations on the number of private events and unchanged footprint for the concession, maintain public access for the people and their pets, and the following of all regulations to make exterior glass surfaces safe for birds. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you very much. So I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard.
Sure, just very briefly, not to everything that was said, but just to a couple of things that were mentioned. First of all, reiterate the response to a previous question from one of the commissioners that the intention is for this to sit very lightly on the site. Secondly, just so that you know, as a manufactured product, this does carry a 15-year warranty, although in speaking with the company, they said that we should expect reasonably at least 30 years of life with proper maintenance. Regarding the materials, just to point out something I did not mention in the presentation, which is that the wood louvered roof, the louvered roof is entirely wood. The louvers are wood louvers. So natural materials are being used here. And finally, in regards to the concern about private events, there will be no change from the existing use. That question came up at one of the community boards, and a representative from LPQ was there and confirmed that there was no change from the existing use.
All right. And I think in the testimony, there was a question about how the translucent walls retract, and I don't know.
Oh, yes.
Address.
They actually work out into the beam. So they completely disappear into the beam. And they are also motorized.
So are they sort of like garage doors that go up?
No,
or-
it's
They roll.
is
Okay.
in the beam and it just like that. We went to the show and watched the demonstration. It was great. It was really great.
What does the look like when it comes down?
So the screen, as you can see, is partly transparent and partly translucent. Does that answer your question? So,
The ones that are in the opening, I assume, are the ones that will come down. Oh, is there a picture? Okay.
And to the left of them, that's the wood louver, or those are the wood louvers?
this is glass
That's-
with louvers.
I see.
So that's fixed.
All right.
So it is an out, is there glass on the roof or is it just open?
It's
Just
wood,
open.
it's wood, and when they open, you can see the sun in the sky.
Okay, so it's really just for solar shade. It's not for water cover.
It's when it's closed, it is completely. It's very slightly sloped to drain, and the drain pipes are located in the plus. You go back forward about 4 slides. That back one. But while we're in the slide, just in response to some of the testimony, just to again point out that there are many, many different styles of design that find a home in Central Park. And then we go back 1 slide. Back. Thank you. You can maybe get a better sense of how the louvers work. And why it is that we're not installing air conditioning.
Okay. All right. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Chapin.
When did you say the current concession contract expires?
Really?
Commissioner Chapin, the concession was competitively bid through a request for proposal process and was awarded in 2022 to Le Pen Quotidian. And that's a 15-year license term, which will expire in 2037.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? No. Okay. So I think we can move to our discussion. Commissioner Master, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
So second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion on this proposal to do this enclosed pergola, partially enclosed pergola, louvered pergola, and attached to the 1959 Mineral Springs building in Central Park. And Commissioner Chu, having worked in the same scenic landmark, would you like to start this one?
Sure. The space itself, I think, is having space that has cover is super useful in the park, and I completely recognize that need, and that's going to service the patrons of this restaurant and the park both. The one thing that I'm feeling a little challenged about is because and also because I don't really have views that I can understand how this relates to the existing structure adjacent, which I know is not the original folly that was here, which is another step away. I'm just trying to understand even the palette, the material palette blend, because I do think that is an opportunity to help make it less jarring as a new piece there. I'm wondering whether black is the right color I just look at it and I'm wondering if that's really, it doesn't have any relationship to the existing structure. I guess there's white trim on the windows all around the existing structure. And my reaction really is it's very simple. I understand it. It's just this little space that has cover. It's to the side of the structure. But somehow the lightness isn't coming across to me because of the heaviness of the structure. And maybe color might help there. I think that in plan, the way that the two volumes jut and then step out also aren't helping that much, because the view that you show, the one piece that sets back is the transition, I think, to the existing building. And there's also some bridge fabric roof, I think, that connects the two. I just want to see the relationship of the two structures somehow. They seem very, very disparate right now. I also question the height. If I look at the slides, can you go back to the slides with the elevation? Yeah, okay. So, and then the proposed. I think really I'm just keep looking at the eave of the main structure and are you underneath it? Because the two get quite close to each other, and that's just a level of respect to what's primary and what's supporting. And make it less competitive and more supporting of the main structure. So my comments are that the tonality, and if you can get something to match more and finish, the wood I think helps to warm it up. But I want to see a little bit more relationship with the existing structure.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lutfi.
Thank you for that perspective. It's very interesting. I especially think the whole question of whether or not it competes with the building is something to consider. Although there is something nice about the fact that it's kind of nestled within it as well. I kind of like it. I think I'm not having a problem with the framing. I think there's something nice about the black and the juxtaposition of the black against the wood. To me is very, I don't know, can we move to another slide where you see it? Even, I mean, that's nice, but there's another one where you even get a better view. I think it's a little, but I just think it sort of sits nicely. It doesn't look that heavy to me. It doesn't compete with the surrounding green and other surfaces. And I like the fact that it actually defines it and calls it out. And I love the fact that, it's like you have this wonderful shade that enables you to bring light in and out depending upon what's going on. I think it's going to be very nice to be in there, and it's going to be a great refuge, but it will also enable you to feel sort of the sense of the light and the warmth as well when you need it. I think it's very smart, and I love the way it rolls up. And it doesn't look permanent, but it does feel sturdy. And it's nice to know that it is sturdy. And I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Well, having walked by and probably bought stuff at the concession stand, I never knew it was called Mineral Springs. But I agree with Commissioner Lofty. I think this is appropriate and a following structure. It would be nice to be in with this. It would fit in pretty well.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson.
Yeah, because I asked about the idea of contrast, didn't mean I didn't like it. I think it's the heaviness of the existing and the new one play against each other. I wish they had a joint or a separation between the light and the heavy. But I think if you look at the interiors, they're quite beautiful. I mean, they're lovely. And the light coming through, the light fabric, the material is gorgeous. You know, I mean, I would love to be in there. The idea of the color is fine for me because, you know, the mid 20th century modern glass box has become a romantic thing now, you know, Philip Johnson and all that. But this works well. I mean, you could change the color if they want to, but it's fine. You know, it's fine. If they want to give it a little bit more jazz, they could change the color. But if they keep it quiet, it's a beautiful contrast. But I think
Okay.
it's the relationship of the two. If you go back to your elevation that you had, but you have an elevation. Yeah, these elevation, they don't quite bring out the beauty of what you have, you know, because the roof overlap. And, you know, if there was a joint, if there was a hierarchy, up proportion, it would be nice. Especially the bottom one. You see how it just kind of cuts across. But the contrast is beautiful.
Okay, Commissioner Master.
I also like it. I wanted to point out that the footprint is the same. And I think it's a big improvement over the existing. I think you have an elegant solution to the issue that you had before where you have all weather access seating and it's waterproof. I love that you were able to find this system, which is very clever. And it allows sunlight and yet you can close it off for rain and then you can also generate heat. So I very much support this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, this is always a difficult issue because we're dealing with a wonderful historic park. And of course, I think everyone would love to see restoration of the original building, as was mentioned by one of the applicants at least. But probably that's not going to happen until they have a new contract at some point. And I hope that, it might be in the future planning for the structure. So the current building is not particularly distinguished, and this area definitely is vastly improved by this simple, light, transparent, and impermanent structure. And it is very attractive by itself. And the question is, is it appropriate to the Olmsted Park? I think if one can look at it as a sort of light pergola seen from which when you see it from afar, it kind of does, I think, fold into the landscape a bit. I think that the comments, Commissioner Chu's comments about the color, that maybe something like a dark brown or something, if that's available from the vendor, might help to have it relate a little bit better to the landscape. I actually, if you had vines growing around, which isn't going to happen, I don't think, but it might actually really begin to recede even more. But anyway, it's such an improvement over what's there currently that I think I can support it until, hopefully some future project might try to do a more historical approach. But, I think this is supportable for what it is.
Okay, thank you. So Commissioner Chu, I think now that you know that the eave on the building is black, do you feel that the color may be okay and establish that relationship between the two?
The issue I had really was there's a slide that shows where the two meet each other, and I just want the applicant to work with staff to understand that there's a plan slide, I think it's 12.
It may be, I wonder if it's the same thing you were also wondering about, if there could, you were talking about a joint between the two.
If you look at slide 12, you see the below. Can we go to change this?
Yeah, Abby, can we?
Go to slide 12.
Slide 12?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Oh,
I can't hear you.
All right, didn't have my speaker on. Okay, so that corner right there, and if you go to the plan, you'll see what I'm referring to. So there's something really nice and clean about this new piece, and it does have a distinct nature. Its mass is smaller than the main. All that's good, but when you see where the two and there's a green patch of landscape there, I don't understand what's going on right there. And I think that if there was some sense of the connection that wasn't just ramming the steel into the facade, it would feel like something added as opposed to just put right up next.
Okay. All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we make a motion to approve it with having them continue to explore with staff the connection at that point, which I think will address both your and Commissioner Jefferson's thoughts. Okay, are you comfortable doing that, Commissioner Chu? Okay, great.
Am I reading?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Sorry.
That's why I asked if you were comfortable doing it.
Okay, LPC, in the case of LPC 2401925 Central Park Middle Springs Building Scenic Landmark, a concession and restroom building built in 1959 with an English Romantic style public park designed in 1857 to 58 by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux. Application is to construct a partially enclosed pergola assembly and modify walls and paving. Let's see. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate or damage any historic architectural or landscape features, increase paving, or disrupt any prominent vistas. That the proposed pergola will replace an existing modern pergola and will be in keeping with the types of site furnishings found in select locations throughout the park. That the replacement pergola will be well scaled to the site and include features designed for weather protection, thereby enhancing and extending public use of the space. That the surrounding paths and landscaping of the pergola will only be seen within a paved yard between the rear of the taller building and their service area and against a background of tall trees, helping the structure to have a subordinate presence within the park. That the simple design and dark finish of the pergola will help it harmonize with the adjoining simply designed building and recede within views of the surrounding parkland. That the relatively thin framing, clear glazing, slatted wood, and roll-up screens will help the structure to recall the openness of pergolas and other similar site furnishings through the park. That the proposed wood screen wall bluestone pavers will be simply designed and in keeping with fencing and paving within the park in terms of materials and finish. That the proposed wood screen wall will block views of existing utilitarian fence at the service yard without obstructing any views of the surrounding parkland. That the awning and quarry tiles will be neutral and finished and largely screened from view. And that the applicant will study the connection between the addition and the existing structure.
All right, and Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, John.
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg, aye, Commissioner Jefferson, aye, Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master. 7 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you. And just please continue to work with the staff on that intersection. All right, that concludes our public hearing today. I want to thank Commissioner Chapin for joining us virtually despite being out and otherwise being out, and thank the public for participating, and thank all the rest of you for your staying here for a very full day today. Thank you.